to Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who announced his intention to run for a second presidential term, indicated that his electoral program will be devoted to completing the achievements and efforts aimed at leading Algeria to safety. The head of state stressed in his interview that everything that the state undertook constituted a basis for leading the Algerian economy towards an economy of an emerging country. And in the Middle East, some 60 bodies have been recovered under the rubble of Shuja'iyya in eastern district of Gaza City after the end of a vast Zionist operation that devastated the area and the withdrawal of the Zionist occupation army, according to Palestinian Territories Civil Defense. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. First, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who announced his intention to run for a second presidential term, indicated that his electoral program will be devoted to completing the achievements and efforts aimed at leading the country to safety. During his periodic interview with the press held at the People's Palace and broadcast Thursday evening, the President of the Republic announced his intention to run for a second presidential term at the request of several political and non-political parties, organizations and youth, as provided for by the Constitution. President Tebboune added that if the people decide to elect him, it would be fine, otherwise he would have fulfilled part of his duty and whoever comes next will continue. He said that the victories were the victories of the people and not his own victories, stressing that everyone testifies that the state's income has increased and the bleeding of the public treasury has ended and billions of dollars of the embezzled funds have been recovered, as mentioned by the Justice Minister. The head of state stressed that the rights of citizens are protected and the leaders are fulfilling their duties at ease as they consider themselves an integral part of this society. Let's listen to the President of the Republic.
أعتقد أن نزولا عند الرغبة نتاع كثير من الأحزاب والمنظمات السياسية وغير سياسية والشباب نتاعنا، أعتقد أن آن الأوان أن أعلن أني سأترشح لعهدة ثانية مثل ما يسمح بها الدستور. إذا الشعب قرر التزكية أهلا وسهلا، وإلا أنا كنت قمت بواجب، يعني من جزء من الواجب، واللي يجي يكمل الله يسهل. بالنسبة لبداية السؤال، إذن الانتصارات كلها كانت انتصارات نتاع الشعب، مش انتصارات نتاعي أنا. الجزائر أنتم تلاحظوا بدون ما ندير حوصلة، لأن مادام أعلنت رسميا عن الترشح نتاعي لعهدة ثانية تكون فيه لقاء ربما مع الصحافة للحوصلة، ولكن الخاص والعام يشهد أن المداخل تاع الدولة تقوات، أن النزيف اللي كان في الخزينة العمومية انتهى، أننا استرجعنا ما كان ممكن استرجاعه من أموال، ووزير العدالة أعطى أرقام ملايير الدولارات اللي استرجعناها. اليوم فيه أكثر راحة للمواطن بالنسبة لصيانة حقوقه، وأصبح يقوم بواجباته بكل فرح، لأن ولا يعتبر نفسه جزء لا يتجزأ من هذا المجتمع.
Abounding in the same sense, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, declared that these economic achievements made by Algeria in recent years prepare it to join the ranks of emerging economies. The head of state stressed in his interview that everything that the state undertook constituted a basis for leading the Algerian economy towards an economy of an emerging country, reiterating his commitment to achieving this objective and for Algeria to reach a GDP of $400 billion annually by 2027.
أعتقد أن كل ما قمنا به كان أساس، كان اللبنة الأولى لجعل الاقتصاد نتاعنا اقتصاد تاع دولة ناشئة، ان بي ايمرجون بأتم المعنى، وانا التزمت ان شاء الله نوصلوا لها ان في سنه اخر 27 اقصاها اخر 27 يكون الدخل القومي نتاعنا ارتفع الى 400 مليار دولار سنويا، يعني جعلنا في نفس المستوى مثل بعض الدول الأوروبية تاع الجنوب، وإلا ربما ما أحسن. هذه هي المقاييس اللي نمشي عليها برقابة بيانسير، برقابة نتاع صندوق النقد الدولي والبنك العالمي والبنك الإفريقي والملاحظات نتاع الاقتصاديين نتاعنا كذلك اللي عندهم رأي في الموضوع. الحمد لله خرجنا من عنق الزجاجة.
Evoking positive indicators, President Tebboune underlined that they are real and recognized by international institutions, including the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, ensuring that Algeria has overcome difficulties and has made great strides and progress on the path of development and the process that ends or that tends to turn it into an economic power in response to the needs of its citizens. Let's listen to the President again.
اعتراف من مؤسستين صعب ترضيتهم مثل صندوق النقد الدولي والبنك العالمي. الحمد لله خطينا أشواط كبيرة في جعل الجزائر في السكة التنموية، رغبة في تلبية حاجيات المواطن أولا، ثانيا لجعل الجزائر قوة اقتصادية، وهذه الرغبة نتاعنا. احنا ما نمشيش فقط بالنظرة هكا الواسعة، نمشي بالمؤشرات. اليوم كل المؤشرات تاعنا تدل، والمؤشرات التي هي معترف بها من طرف صندوق النقد الدولي والبنك العالمي أنها مؤشرات حقيقية، والناس يعرفوا. خلي التعليق الناس اللي يعرفوا الميدان.
Algeria's successes, the president went on to say, remain partial because there is still a long way to go, specifying that Algeria is progressively advancing to become a strong economy, a strong army, a united people, and educated people. All these indicators constitute the basis of the victorious Algeria, the victorious with which the martyrs dreamed.
أين كنا وأين أصبحنا بدون ما هذه كلها إضافة إلى مؤشرات تربية وتخرج تاع بناء الجامعات وبناء كذا، معناه باللي الجزائر تخطو في خطوات تدريجيا ماشية وتسترجع القوة نتاعها حتى تصبح، وهذا الشيء لنا نشتغل من أجله. اقتصاد قوي، جيش قوي، شعب متماسك، شعب نساء الأمية ونساء المثقف، خرجوا منه باحثين، خرجوا منه اقتصاديين. هذه كلها الأساس نتاع الجزائر المنتصرة، الجزائر اللي حلموا بها الشهداء نتاعنا.
Evoking relations with other countries and organizations, the President of the Republic specified that Algeria adopts the principle of reciprocity in its relations, stressing that Algeria is not weaker than any other party and that interests should be common and mutual. He underlined that Algeria's diplomacy at the international level is mirrored by its internal strength. Speaking about the national community abroad, the President of the Republic insisted that it was marginalized in the past, even if it's an integral part of our people.
تعامل معك مثل ما تتعامل معايا. أنا لست أضعف منك إيمانا ولا أضعف منك قوة ولا أضعف منك المصالح، لازم تكون متبادلة. إذا كان المصلحة تمشي من جهة، هذه الشعب المثل الشعبي يعبر عليها بصفة واضحة، من عندي ومن عندك تنطبع، إذا كان غير من عندي تنقطع. الندية هذه داخلة في الشخصية تاع الجزائري بنفسه. القوة الدبلوماسية نتاعنا والقوة في الخارج هي الشيء اللي تعكسه المرآة الداخلية. يستحيل باش تكون قوي في الخارج بدون ما تكون قوي في الداخل. الجالية وقت فات يعني أنسيت، بينما هي جزء لا يتجزأ من الشعب تاعنا. فيه ظروف اللي خلتهم يعيشوا في المهجر، فيه ظروف كذا، أننا نسترجعوا في اللحمة بينهم بين الوطن الأم.
Finally, with regard to his work and inspection visit he paid to the province of Tizi Ouzou, the President of the Republic affirmed that it was successful at all levels. And to get more insight and information about the declaration of the President of the Republic during his periodic interview with the media, we listen to this special report by our colleague Saïd Boughazi.
Referring to some of these indicators which testify to the current strength of the national economy, the President of the Republic pointed out that state revenues had increased, that the drain on the treasury was a thing of the past, and that Algeria had recovered the squandered funds estimated in billions of dollars. He also cited the registration of thousands of investments with the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency API, the increase in the value of non-hydrocarbon exports, and the suspension of imports of several products, notably building materials, which were driving up the cost of housing. In this respect, he stated that his visits to the country's provinces had shown that the people are satisfied with what has been achieved in terms of development, assuring that the people now know the difference between demagogy and reality and between lies and truth. On the issue of housing, the President of the Republic reaffirmed the state's commitment to provide decent housing for its citizens by gradually eliminating the remaining precarious housing, recalling the availability of financial resources for the implementation of the programs announced. We have overcome the difficulties and made a great deal of progress in our efforts to put Algeria back on the road to development and turn it into an economic power in response to the needs of the citizens, he maintained. This success remains partial because there is still a long way to go, said the President of the Republic, who at the same time announced his intention to run for a second presidential term in response to the public's desire to see this process completed.
And the subscription forms for the individual signatures of the contender for candidacy in the presidential election of September 7, 2024, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, have been withdrawn at the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Authority, ANI, by his representative, Boualem Boualem. Earlier in the day, the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has announced his intention to stand for a second term. The Prime Minister, Nadel Arbaoui, has chaired a government meeting devoted to examining legislation and making presentations on a number of sectors, including justice, fisheries production, and the fight against drug trafficking. Majid Mullah has more details.
During the meeting, the government examined the state of progress of the process of bringing the justice system into line with the provisions of the 2020 Constitution, as well as the measures adopted to improve public service and ensure its smooth running. This was done in fulfillment of the commitment of the President of the Republic regarding the comprehensive reform of the justice system in order to guarantee its independence and modernization. The government also examined the draft executive decree setting out the time limits for payment of expenditure, the procedures for collection of revenue, and the conditions for admission of non-value items, which sets out the time limits for execution of expenditure, and the introduction of procedures to improve the rate of collection of revenue, as well as the strengthening of management rules based on transparency and the standardization of relations between authorizing officials and assigning accountants. In addition, as part of the monitoring of the implementation of the President's guidelines on the development of fisheries production, the government heard a presentation of the strategy for the development of aquaculture and fisheries at the 2030 horizon, aimed at improving the supply of fisheries products to the national market. It also examined ways of strengthening the regulatory framework governing fishing activities, notably in terms of encouraging deep-sea fishing and setting a new framework governing fishing zones. The government also heard a communication on the measures taken by the public authorities to combat trafficking in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances and the commendable results achieved in this area, as well as ways of continuing to mobilize the full force of a multidimensional integrated strategy to tackle this cross-border threat. Lastly, the government listened to a presentation of the progress of the project to modernize the Bay of Algiers as part of a strategic vision of the President of the Republic for the development and modernization of the capital Algiers by 2030.
And in the Middle East now, some 60 bodies have been recovered under the rubble in Shuja'iyya, an eastern district of Gaza City, after the end of a vast Zionist operation that devastated the area and the withdrawal of the Zionist occupation army, according to the Palestinian Territory Civil Defense. Said Boughazi has more details.
The civil defense spokesman Mahmoud Basal said in a statement that 85% of the buildings in the neighborhood are uninhabitable, not to mention all the infrastructure that has been demolished. On Wednesday, the Zionist occupation army had called some 300,000 to 350,000 residents to evacuate, according to the UN. In Gaza City, there were also clashes in the south and bombardments in the west, according to the Wafa news agency. Since 7th October, this Zionist aggression has claimed more than 38,000 lives, most of them civilians, according to data from the Palestinian Ministry of Health. 4 dead, including a child, were taken to Nasser Hospital in Rafah after Zionist raids on the Tel Es-Sultan neighborhood in the west of the city. In the center of the Gaza Strip, 4 people were also killed in a Zionist airstrike on the Nusayrat refugee camp, according to the Ministry of Health. The situation in the besieged territory is disastrous. Humanitarian aid is waiting on the Palestinian side of the Karam Abu Salem checkpoint in the south of the Gaza Strip. On the diplomatic front, the mediators have relaunched their efforts to move towards a ceasefire.
And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for a weekly program with our colleague Hannah Delil.
Hello and welcome to In Conversation with Hannah Delil. The best way to discover a country is to know more about its people and most of all about its arts. And today we have the honor as a guest, musician, composer and singer, conductor and arranger, Safi Boutella. Safi Boutella, hello, and thank you for joining us on Radio Algeria International.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank
you very much for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure, and it's a way for us to know more about you and your career, as it is also a way to know more about Algeria and art in Algeria, because you, in more than 30 years of artistic career, you were one of the most important defender of the Algerian music on international scenes. And your compositions or your arrangement you did to so many artists, your touch that you gave to so many movies, be they Algerians or Europeans like French movies and Italians and so many others. It's the Algerian touch of your soul, shall we say. But first of all, we'd just like to know, how did you get to music? What were your influences when you were a child, or maybe a little bit later?
Quite easy actually, because my father used to be military.
Yes.
In the Algerian army, and before actually also in the French army. That's Algerian history.
History indeed,
and,
yes.
He was a big listener and either a singer, and he used to sing us melodies from Beethoven or Mozart or Kulthum or whoever, or Yves Montand, or such musics that in the 50s and the 60s.
Yes.
And so we always were into music. Even his brothers and sisters used to love other types of music, like rock and roll, early rock and roll music and jazz music, etc. And then everybody in the family used to sing and play guitar or play piano or play something. And when I was young, I started to have some groups, and I started to compose very early, actually, like when I was maybe 13, 14, 15, on a guitar. And then I did some conservatories in here, Algeria, and then Algiers, and then Paris after.
Yes.
But I decided to be a musician, to go into a career, maybe around 18 or something like that, because the choice was difficult. It's not an easy way to, you don't know how you're going to make it.
Yes,
actually.
yes. Most parents,
yes.
most of the time, don't encourage their kids to...
On top of it.
Yes,
on top of it.
Yes.
And I also maybe wanted to be a pilot.
Yes.
I think at one point I hesitated a bit and said, let's be a pilot, because I'm sure to have like a proper job and whatever. So I was, because I used to love that. But I decided actually to choose music, the most difficult choice, and it worked. And actually now I'm a pilot, because I went back to it very late, like 3 years ago or something. So now I can fly small planes and whatever.
That's wonderful, like Beechcraft and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Safi Boutella, you carried your musical studies in the United States at Berkeley University, which means that you went really deeply into the studies of music. What were your influences? What are the influences that you got from studying in the United States? Jazz, I suppose?
Yes, jazz and also classical, because there you can find, especially in that school, Boston School of Music, College of Music, you could have courses on, many fields, like classical music, film composing, arranging, so many things, and so many concerts in the town, and so my influences were from everywhere, from my parents, from my country, my own country,
yes,
and then from the States and from France, and my ears were wide open, actually.
So when you were freshly graduated, that young, freshly graduated musician, what were your projects at that time?
I didn't want to stay in the United States.
Why?
Because I could stay and teach. That's what I was actually asked for, and I didn't want to, because I wanted to run back to Algeria, and I don't know.
You wanted to do something here in Algeria?
Yes, because that was the place to do things for me the most urgently, and not in the States. You know, in America they have enough composers and
everything
enough
has been
arrangers.
nearly done, isn't it?
Yes, even though.
Yes.
But I adore my country. We have to know that, and I adore my people, and I adore especially the kids and the youth. I want to give them whatever I have. So that's what I wanted to do.
Yes.
I went back.
Yes. Safi Boutella, at the beginning of your career, you formed bands, and bands with artists from different parts of the world, and you got that influence. How could you introduce the Algerian music in your compositions and within a band?
Actually, I didn't start with bands. I started with, I had a strategy in my mind.
Yes.
I knew that if I started with bands, it would be difficult because my music was not that commercial. So I decided to work with the cinema industry, with the movies, music for films, and then that gave me the opportunity to experiment things. And also, I don't know how you say, but it's worth it. I mean, you work on,
Yes.
film music, you can earn some money and then
Yes.
do what you like
Kind
besides.
of financial independence in a way.
Yes, exact.
Yes.
And then I started to make bands, or my own bands,
Yes.
with people from everywhere. And I started slowly to introduce Algerian music into that jazz and classical way of making it at that time. It came slow by slow, but it came, because all musics actually can fit together. You know, you can marry, like you can marry a French girl or whatever. You can marry musics, whatever musics. You can find the way, but you have to have a good taste. That's, I think, the most important quality, because a lot of people try to do that, to mix musics. The way was not the best choice.
There's even that world music trend that has inundated the world with that kind of attempt to mix music coming from...
I don't know. I liked my way to do it. I did it most of the time very delicately. It was for me very important to respect whatever I was doing. So each choice was the best for me.
Algeria, we have different styles of music. We have the traditional Sha'bi Andalusian music. We have music coming and tunes coming from the eastern part, from the southern part of the country, kind of Tindi, from Janet, from many parts. And in the western part, we have Rai music. When it was about composing, how did it come to you? Do you choose a certain style, or it just comes to you?
I don't know. You know, when I worked on Rai music, it was an idea with Colonel Snoussi by that time.
At that time, he was at the head of Riyad al-Fath or Oref Center here in Upper Algiers.
Exact.
It was in 1986, and you produced the well-known album Kuche with Khaled, Shab Khaled at that time.
By that time, people didn't like the idea, because you know, the consumers of Rai music, traditional Rai music by that time, thought I was going to destroy Rai music or make it too clean, you know.
Even Rai music was not well considered. It wasn't broadcast on public radios at that time.
On top of it, yes, on top of it.
Yes.
So I decided to, with the Colonel Snoussi and Khaled, to work on an album. Even though people were scared, it worked, actually. And
it did, yes.
When it went out, not all the people liked it. A lot of people say, wow, it's too clean, this is not Rai anymore, this is not Rai music anymore. But after a while, it became the reference of Rai music worldwide. So then, since that time, they thank me. And yes, they've been thankful, and I'm very happy of that, because I was very proud of doing that record. I was very happy doing it. I was very happy getting close to a different community than mine. We were not the same type of people. Khaled is a kind of person. He likes kind of things. He lives with in a particular way, and I live it in another particular way also. We don't have the same, let's say, culture or cultural habits and whatever. And I decided to go...
And everybody was at that time saying that it won't work.
Yes, it
People
won't work.
used to say you are too different to be able to do something together.
Exact.
Yes.
And I went actually there, and I stayed, I think, like a month or whatever. I was sleeping at Khaled's, and we were every night in cabarets, which I was not used to, you know, like staying awake until 7 or 8 in the morning. That was not my stuff, I mean. But I did it, and I remember that when I was going back home after, I found myself crying, really crying.
Really? Why?
Yes, crying, because it was emotionally very touching for me. I was very sensitive, and I was very happy that I could have the reflex to go to a community, to get inside.
An immersion.
Immersion, because after every night, mostly when you finish at 7 a.m., you're very, fragile, maybe vulnerable or whatever. And that's when you feel the most profound feelings, you know. And at that time, I was saying to myself, you're not only doing something to this singer, you're not only doing something to this kind of music, Rai music, you are actually doing something for the country. I was feeling it like something for the country. I was aware that I was doing something serious.